Hello and welcome to White Hat Riddles. I'm Angel.
And I'm Krasi, and today we're going to talk about war.
Today we're going to talk about NATO. In light of the recent events that are unfolding between Trump and Europe and the European Union, and especially our participation in NATO and joint efforts, we decided that it's time to cover one of the most important topics, and that is what is the purpose of NATO and actually what does NATO do? How does it help countries in the Atlantic or in Europe? And we actually have Krasi, who has worked for 2 years in NATO.
Don't tell anyone about it, please.
Yeah, don't share it,
Keep it secret.
He actually will share some insights on what is the actual work that's happening in NATO behind the curtains. No secret information, so foreign spies, it's not for you. But this is mostly.
But if my phone is switched off tonight, just so that you know.
Yeah, perfect. So let's start with where we are. Just a short preview for those who don't know. We work in cybersecurity, obviously. We have a cybersecurity company called Soul Cyber, and we also develop agentic cybersecurity solution with our product Kikimora. And it is very important for us to know where the geopolitical situation is moving, because cybersecurity is a core part of both our daily lives, but as well as any form of military actions. So, first of all, we need to understand what are the differences between traditional cybersecurity and military one. Krasi?
Should I deep dive straight to the tech part? Because at the end, I'm going to talk about the tech part. Yeah. I would let you discuss the political situation if 100%. You want. And talk about national security, but I would like to focus on the most critical part, and actually what's the difference between enterprise-grade security and military-grade security. Of course, there are a lot of differences, some of them associated with the people, with the personnel working for the military agencies. Yep. Some of them are related with the equipment that we're using, the software as well, the applications which are developed for the agency compared to the one developed for enterprises. Now I have about 2 years of experience performing vulnerability management, which means identifying cybersecurity gaps for the NATO, one of the NATO agencies. It was a very, very interesting experience, I can say. Of course, I'm not going to be able to share a lot of secrets with you, and I don't know any. Just for you to know. Yeah, only Angel knows, but please don't take him for ransom. We're not going to pay the ransom for him. So
this one's free.
Yeah, what would you like to start with, basically?
So essentially, what is the difference? Let's say, do military, military organizations like NATO, do they use the same software, for example? Because we know that the hardware is completely different. We're talking about military-grade computers. These things in the cases. We're talking about using these, how do we call these, rocket launchers, different type of machines. I think that even now the military has these types of helmets that you can use for night visions and so on, which also have chips. So my guess is they also can be hacked and so on.
So when it comes to software development, yes, there are some differences. First of all, let's consider the software not as a piece of software code, but as an application which accepts user input, right? Yeah. That's the purpose of the software, to get some data, digest the data, eventually store it in a database so that you can do something with the application. So in terms of data inputs, one of the key differences is that it's mandatory. Usually the NATO agency, all the military agencies, they perform the so-called penetration testing activities. And this is mandatory. For enterprise software, to a huge extent, this is optional. Mm-hmm. In the military, that's mandatory. And there is a very strong, very powerful team of red teamers and pen testers checking each and every application which is developed. Now, the second main difference when it comes to applications. The enterprises, to a huge extent, they develop software which is going to be used by external users, by let's say, all the users in society for financial operations, healthcare and stuff. The military-grade software, of course, we need to make a difference between the hardware which is manipulated and operated by a piece of software and the actual applications which are still serving some users. Of course, internal users mostly. Military experts, civilian NATO personnel, contractors, these are the ones operating the software, which means that the software is not available for external use in most cases. So the software is restricted, located inside a closed environment, and no one has access from the outside world. That's one of the differences. Now, when it comes to securing the software code during development, because you have two ways to secure the code. When it's already live in production, it's already up and running. You can download it from from Play Store, for example, and then you can perform some vulnerability scanning activities, penetration testing efforts. This is after the code has been deployed already. But there is something called CI/CD security, or ensuring that the software code is secure during the whole software development lifecycle. So you're actually scanning the code as it gets developed during the whole development phase. And this is something that NATO is usually doing for all the software. It's carefully analyzed from day one. The architecture is carefully analyzed, the user inputs, the logical boundaries of the data, where it gets stored, how the data is handled. So if, let's say, in enterprise, there is some activities, let's say they invest X amount of money for cybersecurity checks, then NATO is investing, 5 times cybersecurity, five times money in making sure the software is secure.
Okay, and my personal question for me, does the military technology, and let's say the military organization, use internet? Or there's some other form of communication?
Yeah, they do. There is external portals as well. They give information about the weather, about the roadblocks. No, there is some application. There is some portals, of course, which are available for use from the outside world. And also, we must consider that not all the NATO personnel operate secret information, right? I would say probably more than 50% of the employees are not working with confidential or secret information. So there is a lot of portals which are serving normal user needs, like taking your kids to kindergarten. There is a portal for this. Subscribing for classes, there is a portal for this. So this kind of portals, they are still NATO developed, but they are not serving any sensitive information, so there is no need for security. Of course, the rest of the software, the one which has to be used by a specific department, for example, is only available to this very department. It's not even available to the other departments. If I'm responsible for on-field security activities, on-field armed activities, these guys, they're not going to have access to the portal, which is allowing the crypto experts to analyze the cryptographic code. So, there is a very good segregation of the different networks inside the organization.
But the networks are not accessed by internet. They're localized, siloed environments.
Completely local, absolutely completely isolated from internet.
Okay, so unable to hack from outside. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's say, how does, let's say, an office or a military base look like from a cybersecurity perspective? Something that you can share, obviously. I don't want to share secrets, but I think people would want to get a little bit...
To get inside.
Yeah. Probably most people don't want to be involved in military, but it's interesting, to get a grasp of how does it feel like.
Well, to start with, there is 2 different types of military bases. There is more, but let's say 2 main types of military bases. The first one is the military armed bases, which are serving armed forces, of course, with they're weaponized, heavily weaponized. And there is the second type, which are technical buildings, where you have the communications equipment, you have all the applications, the network management, the infrastructure, which is holding crucial communications. So we have to segregate those. In some bases, you have airfields, you have launch pads for drones, for airplanes, and the other ones you have communications equipment. So, but to be more precise, to be more accurate, when you start getting inside the military base, you have the so-called multi-layered security approach. So first you have to enter the base, and then that's a free access, for all the families and kids as well. So everybody can access, of course, if they are somehow associated with the army, with the military stuff. Then you have the second access point, which actually takes you to the working building, and then of course you have multiple other layers of security as you get inside the building, so that you can get to your specific office or location of work. So it's a multi-layered approach. Of course, you have a lot of turnstiles, you have a lot of identity access systems on the way. So you need to have a device with you which allows you to enter the building. Then, of course, in some specific areas, you have biometric identification. So you need to be recognized.
And you're not bringing your own iPhone in, I guess.
You're not bringing your own device. You're not allowed to. Of course, there is lockers outside of the building, like in every more important building. You
like
have those
in Lidl as well.
Yeah. So inside the lockers, you can leave your phone if you're not worried that somebody will intercept your data.
Yep.
But of course, you're not allowed to bring your own device inside the building. Or if you do, it needs to be checked. It needs to be verified in advance that it's matching the criteria of security for the organization. It's in line with all the requirements, the standards, and everything. Basically, they check your phone and they say, well, this can or cannot enter the building.
All right. And the most important thing, at least for me, because we're in obviously shifting times and so on, again, bringing back to the level of what most people will be interested in, why NATO is important for a country. We come from a smaller country, right? So essentially we don't have this big budgets for military and so on. What is the type of cybersecurity that NATO is providing for countries?
So it's important to mention that especially the agency I worked for, NCIA, it serves other countries, the military bases in other countries.
Okay.
So what we did is actually we've been protecting all the NATO member states from malicious hackers. So it is important for national security reasons. Let's say right now we see that the political situation is quite unstable, which means that tomorrow, who knows, there might be a third world war. And if that happens, then you need to make sure that all the critical national agencies, they continue functioning. All the critical military equipment needs to stay in shape. All the communications, they need to be in very good shape, and they need not to be disturbed by malicious actors. Also, as member states, we communicate important information between each other. And actually, one of the reasons why we're protecting those different member states is that the communication between them needs to stay secure. This communication is important for logistics, for strategic discussions, for military personnel, where the army is going to apply the next layer of defense. This communication, it travels across the member states, and you need to make sure that the communication between the countries is secure. And when they submit some information, which might also be, for example, the member states, they also exchange information about the plans of the enemy. So it's very important to know those plans. Maybe they have some strategic information or plans for military equipment. And this information needs to stay secure. So that's why we need to protect the military states from malicious hackers.
And what about training and investment? Because these are core components, right? Let's say cross-border training. My guess is that NATO does cross collaborations apart from the program that you were in, but I guess we have structures that involve every single country in terms of training on cyber security threats. We're strictly talking about cyber security. Obviously, we're not going to discuss military operations in terms of physical equipment because we're not experts on this. So yeah, what is there like specific things that NATO is providing to us? I just kind of want to communicate the value because I think it's misunderstood.
Yeah, so the NATO agency provides trainings to all the member states and also to the tech team supporting the infrastructure and the IT departments holding the data. They get this kind of training. In NATO, there is something called Red Blue Team exercise, which is also important for incident response activities. Also, you have this in the enterprise world, but in NATO, you have it quite often, which means also you have a purple team. So you have red team, which is attacking the organization, a predefined infrastructure, prepared replica of the, let's say, the production one. Then you have the blue team who is defending the infrastructure, and you have the purple team who is coordinating the efforts between the two. And this kind of trainings you get all the time, because it's important to simulate what a real attack will look like. If tomorrow somebody wants to hack one of the member states, that's the same, they're going to do the same activities. They will initiate the same kind of malicious traffic. They will try to penetrate the network in the same way, just like we do with the simulated red teaming campaigns. On the other side, it's very important for the defensive team not just to know how to defend by theory, but they need to have practical experience defending this specific infrastructure. Getting somewhere, working with piece of software and hardware doesn't necessarily mean that you know how a real attack looks like. So that's why these kind of red blue team activities are very important to train the experts.
Yeah, all right. That's my opinion as well. I think we should basically improve the cross-country collaboration on this, specifically sharing knowledge, and especially with AI, cyber threats are evolving at a rapid speed. So the more the merrier in terms of collaboration and learning. But let's go a little bit more in depth into the technical differences. Let's say, what do you think is the biggest difference? Let's say, what's the depth of an attacker? What's the depth of knowledge that an attacker needs to have to be able to attack some form of a military equipment? Is it for everyone? Can everyone attack? Let's say.
Yeah, in terms of data storage, that's probably the hardest point, because when you are attacking a banking system, then it's available for you. You can just immediately start attacking it. There is no, let's say, no border between you and the information, the application portal. In NATO, it doesn't work like that. All the information is classified, which means that you have predefined systems, and only the information can be accessed only from those specific computers. You cannot just bring your laptop and access all the data. It doesn't work like that. So for the hackers, in terms of technical skills, I would say it's the same. But the important part is the access. Because on one side, if you're attacking a healthcare application, you have all the access. You can immediately start attacking it. But if you want to get access to NATO information, first you need to penetrate some external network, which eventually must be connected with internal network, which is not the case usually. And then inside the internal network, you need to find a way to pivot to the right network, which holds this specific information, because the networks are very well segregated. So in my opinion, the most probable way, of course, is to use an employee, let's say a disgruntled employee who is willing to exfiltrate data for you, like we saw with Edward Snowden some years ago. That's what he did. He exfiltrated data from NSA, and that was the only way to get this information. Otherwise, you have to bring someone inside the building, inside the secret areas, inside the specific office, which is locked by a couple of other security mechanisms in place. And only then you get access to the system which holds the data, or to the system actually having access to the server that holds the data, So it's even more complicated. So how do you get someone inside the building, inside the organization? Impossible.
How do you go outside after putting something?
You have security cameras, then you have the turnstiles, then you have the access cards, then you have the biometrics. So you can imagine how difficult it is, how well prepared and funded this campaign needs to be. And definitely you need to have an internal employee who is going to give you the data. You cannot do it by yourself.
Are there any recorded cases that you are aware of someone hacking NATO systems?
Not really. But
Okay.
there is a lot of attempts.
Yeah?
There is a lot of attempts. There is NATO invests a lot of money in the so-called CTI, which is Cyber and Threat Intelligence. This means that you are constantly monitoring the malicious activities by some hackers out there, some hacking groups on internet. for your specific organization. You're keeping an eye on what software they are trying to develop in your infrastructure, what kind of attacks they are attempting. You're analyzing the behavior of the malicious actors. And this is something very crucial for NATO. Constantly, they have incident response team taking care of this, and they are continuously analyzing the incoming data, the incoming traffic, and they are trying to see the patterns. Let's say if there is a malicious traffic, malicious attempt, they're carefully analyzing. They are re-educating, retraining the systems to recognize this kind of malicious attempts in the future. And then that's how the security is continuously improved over time. It's not like you do it every 3 months, but you're doing it on a daily basis.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised that they haven't been hacked, obviously. But my guess is that it's pointless to even hack it, because even if you get the information, it's probably encrypted, right? So then yeah. Okay. And when you say they listen for this information, right? My guess is that if someone wants to hack NATO, they will be prepared. I think not only nation states would be even brave enough to start doing this. So is it like listening tools in terms of the way that we listen to a dark web, let's say forums and so on? If there's any shared information, do they follow communication channels, let's say secretly, obviously? Or is there another way for them to test, let's say make a fake environment or something like this?
So let me come to the encryption part first, which is also different compared to enterprise-grade security. The encryption with NATO and with the military agencies usually follows the best known, the hardest encryption ciphers to decrypt.
Okay.
So usually in the militaries you have an encryption standard which is getting tested for years, and only then it gets released to the public, to the wide audience. So let's say in most organizations nowadays we see 128-bit encryption ciphers in place, encryption keys. In the military agencies, usually you have 256 as a minimum. Also, they use some specific protocols for communication. So let's say we know that Signal, Telegram, Viber, WhatsApp, they use encrypted communication.
Yeah.
Well, militaries, they have different applications for communication, and they rely on different ciphers. So even if you know how the cipher works, even if you can reverse engineer the cipher, they have a different cipher and you don't know about it. You don't have access to the cipher, so that you can research it.
Okay, so it's not that like the, let's say, SHA-256 or...
No, not really. But then you asked me about something. So there is something which is called honeypots. And usually we have this in enterprises as well, but especially in military-grade infrastructure. The honeypots are usually a full replica of a typical environment, typical infrastructure. So the idea is to simulate that this is your real environment. And the idea is to mislead the victim into believing that this is your typical infrastructure, that's your valid and production infrastructure.
So you're turning the attacker into a victim, actually, because you're faking it. Okay.
On the one side, this aims to point the attacker's direction in the wrong place. So they invest efforts in fake infrastructure. On the other side, very important, you are carefully analyzing what they're trying to do. And then you can analyze the traffic, you can analyze the pattern, the malware, the software code, and you can create defense, which is specifically tailored for this kind of attacks. Okay,
yeah, but my guess is that they at some point realize this is a honeypot, right? If they don't get some form of...
I didn't ask them.
You didn't ask the bees if they get some honey. All right, I get it. And then what you said you worked for 2 years in NATO, right? How did this happen? How does someone work in NATO? I guess a lot of people would be interested in the coming years to get involved into military operations in some capacity, not necessarily fighting. I think the physical fighting on the street is almost over after Ukraine. I think this will be probably the last full fight in Europe. But how do you start working in NATO?
There is 3 different ways to get there. The first one
alive. We want to get there alive. Yeah. Okay.
Alive and without handcuffs.
Yeah, no handcuffs.
So the first way is if you're serving military, if you're serving the army of your specific member state, and then some part of the army members, some of the army members are appointed for serving NATO for X amount of time, usually 6 months, 12 months, 3 years. 3 years is the default, I think, nowadays. The second way is to become a NATO civilian, which means that you need to apply for some specific position. They have listings on their websites. They have open positions. Then you apply, you provide your CV just like any other job, and they are doing some background checks on you. They're checking your expertise, your professional skills, your experience, and they invite you for an interview, and then you can become a NATO civilian. The third option is to be a serving company or a serving contractor provider for NATO. So just like you have this with all the security agencies out there, with NSA, with NCIA, with FBI probably, you have this type of contractors, which is an external company, external person or external company, and they provide some services to you. And because NATO doesn't have enough people employed, and they cannot employ enough people, and sometimes they have like short-term projects, like 6 months, 12 months. It doesn't make sense to hire someone for 6 months. It takes a lot of time and efforts to arrange the social securities. It's very sweet to work for NATO, by the way.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time for them to organize the employment, the residency in the specific country. So instead, what they do is they hire external providers, external companies for specific projects.
Okay.
And this company delivers. Of course, very important to mention, if you want to work with NATO, you need to have the specific security clearance in place. NATO requires that you can work with either restricted or confidential or secret or atomic secret. It's like different levels of security classification, which you have to obtain from your local security agency in your member state, in your country. Of course, you have to apply for this. They're doing some research on you. They're checking your family. They perform some background checks to see if you are maybe a criminal or you have some political connections, or maybe you work for some spying agencies, you know.
Where does the money come from?
Yeah, where does the money come from?
Yeah, okay.
So they have these background checks for you, and then they send this information to NATO, and NATO is either accepting or rejecting your application. And then when you start serving, important to know that in most cases you have pretty much the same job like the NATO civilians. You have the same access levels. You have the same. You sit next to each other. You know, it's like you're doing the same thing. It's just you have different legal obligation.
Are you considered military personnel when you?
No, you're not.
Right.
No.
Okay. And a personal question I have: when you work in a NATO office, what's the vibe? Everyone works in military, right? I mean, what's the difference between, we go to the office, how is your wife doing? What did you drink yesterday, something like this?
I mean, you still have those small talks, but the vibe is what you expect it to be. It's more, let's say, people are more careful when it comes to sharing information because they know that everything can be used against them.
Yeah.
So they don't just openly share information like this. The office it doesn't look like our office. You don't have the huge open windows, the Vitosha mountain view. You don't have all of this. It's like a very closed office. You have one little window, but it's built in a way that you're not exposing too much information to the outside world. So it's a very, I would say, very closed area, and it's not like the typical office. The military bases most of them are somewhere in the remotes. They're not in the city center, so you don't have. It's not on Vitosha Street Boulevard.
Okay, yeah. So somewhere outside. So what about the differences in hardware? I've seen these PCs online, with the kind of, they say military grade. There's a box. Looks pretty cool, actually. I want to buy one of these just to feel like I'm like a Navy SEAL,
Yeah. when you work with military information, you need to do it from specific computers and systems. You cannot just work from any computer out there. And this equipment usually needs to be tempest-proofed, which means that usually the equipment emits electromagnetic fields. So if I'm close to you, I can use the electromagnetic field of your laptop and I can capture the traffic, I can capture the information that your laptop is emitting. Because all these electronic components inside the hardware, that's how they operate. They emit electromagnetic waves. And if there is a way to capture those, then you can reveal a lot of information. So for this reason, there is something called Faraday shielding, which means that the equipment is built in a way that there is specific components like additional aluminum or copper inside the computer, which does not allow to emit electromagnetic waves outside of this specific box. And that's what you have. Also important to mention that depending on the access classification, you have to use different systems. You cannot just access all the data from one single system, you know. It needs to be dedicated system which is located in the specific network, which has the specific insulation inside, the specific layers of foil to avoid to prevent the emitting.
Okay.
So that's on the one side. On the other side, there is a funny story. Back in the days in the agency, we had a TV at some point, and we finally made it. We were able to play YouTube videos, and then one Sunday morning, you got in. There is paper in front of the TV with tape, and it says "Do not use." And you're like, what's going on? Like, what's the matter with this one? And then the security officer comes in later that day and he's like, who allowed you to put a TV here? And we're like, we're just like watching YouTube videos and also from the internal network, from the filtered network, which means that you're carefully analyzing all the incoming traffic. You know what we're doing right now. So what's the issue? Like, what if if this one emits electromagnetic fields and somebody captures the information? We're like, but there is no one in the circle, in the next circle of 15 kilometers. Like, how is this even possible? Yada, yada. So they removed the TV and there was no TV anymore because of the specific requirements for the hardware equipment. Also, I see the point because there is also acoustic and vibration damping, which means that with laser microphone from pretty far away, you can hear the information. You can hear you can capture the audio wave, and by doing this, you can represent the audio conversation or the music that you're playing or whatever you're doing on YouTube, which also is valid for keystrokes. When you type on the keyboard, you have some specific acoustic signals from each individual button on your keyboard, which they can also capture with remote laser microphones. Yeah.
That sounds scary,
the infrastructure, the cables are different as well. They need to have additional shielding inside the cable, which doesn't allow if you're close to the cable and let's say you're trying to capture the electromagnetic field, you're not able to do it because there is additional shielding inside the cable which prevents the emissions.
All right, that sounds really scary, to be honest, as a regular guy. Just to highlight something here, what we've heard so far, from Krasi, for me at least, highlights the need of many countries participating into something like this, like an alliance. I don't think we would have these types of levels of even military development or strength in defense, so on, if you do it separately, country by country. Most probably, my guess, I'll make a wild guess here, that these inventions don't come from one of the countries in NATO. Most likely a lot of them are shared between the USA and so on. It's a misunderstanding that USA is the only one producing weapons. We buy them from them for now. But a lot of the European, especially the northern countries, have their own equipment factories. We can make planes in Europe as well.
Turkey is also part of NATO.
Turkey is weird, to be honest. They play everyone, which is, I guess, from a political standpoint, they're very good because you play both sides, so it should be more win for the country itself. But let's not go there. But with so many people right? So many people using these types of different software, hardware. How do you make sure that everyone has access at the same time to the places that they need? What's the processes especially for the hardware and stuff? How do you know what?
So last thing when it comes to the hardware part, because I missed something, to talk about the electronic components, which are also different. In your box, I'm calling it a box because it's a piece of equipment, could be a could be a workstation, could be a laptop. The electronic components, the diodes, the transistors, the resistors, everything is enterprise grade. In the military equipment, you have military grade components. So even the small transistors are different inside. For example, in your laptop, under extreme heat or extreme radiation or electromagnetic interference, your laptop is gonna crash. It will stop working. The military grade equipment also have different components allowing it to continue working under very hard conditions, very specific environment. But coming back to your question, the access is different. When it comes to people, first you have different classification levels. You are allowed to work with specific kind of data. Unclassified.
Are they public, by the way? Can you share what the levels are? Is it public?
Yeah. It's usually in cyber and information security, you have 3 or 4 different levels, depending on different books say different things. But in my experience, based on my practice, you have unclassified data, which is free for use. Then you have classified, and the classification levels usually are restricted. Then you have confidential, which is higher level. Then you have secret. Then you might have top secret or atomic secret, which means that just a few people need to know about it. So these are the basic levels, and depending on what you have to do in the organization, you are granted specific classification level associated with your identity, and that's what the National Security Agency gives you. If they give you up to confidential, then you cannot work with secret information. However, a lot of people confuse the classification levels you're given with access to information. If I have restricted level classification, it doesn't mean that I have access to restricted information. In the military, in the military agencies, usually there is something called must know, which means that you must have some requirement to know specific information, and only then you're granted access to the information. Without the need to know, nobody is going to give you access to this specific information. Yes, it can be restricted, but if you're not supposed to know this exact information, then why would you know it? You're exposing the agency. And then the third component is, as I said, the actual access to the information. So somebody needs to check your security clearance. They need to see the must know. So someone requested that you have this information, a higher level personnel. And then someone from the tech department, they make sure that you actually have technological access to the required information. And on top of this one, all the actions are recorded. So whatever you do, whatever you download, you click something, you open an email, you open a file, you try to send it over to your personal email. Everything is captured, everything is carefully monitored, so you cannot make a mistake. If you try sending some sensitive information with classification label restricted, there is a data leakage prevention system. It's going to capture your traffic, and tomorrow they're gonna they're gonna come knocking on your door asking why did you try sending this information to your personal email, for example.
In the era of AI, probably now it's happening immediately. You don't need to go home.
Yeah,
they take
actually,
you straight.
they'll not let you go home.
Yeah. They take you straight to the cabin. For further interrogation. Let's call it this way, right? Okay, and then we talked about the people, right? We talked about the software, hardware, and when communication happens, you mentioned it a little bit about the passwords and stuff, but there are different types of cryptography used in military equipment, right? It is the different. Let's call it, they are probably coming from somewhere, but they're not going to tell you what it is, right? They probably use academic research.
So let me tell you something. People talk just like they do in the normal companies. So you have all the people just exchanging ideas and information, all the people from CTI team, incident response team, vulnerability management, pen testers. We talk like normal people, we share, we exchange ideas. It was only the crypto team that you don't know who they are, they don't share any information, all the ciphers, everything is completely secret. There is like, I don't know, three or four people that they know what's going on. So nobody gets access to this information except some very special people.
All right. And they probably just look like just a regular folk somewhere in the office.
I would assume I never met them. I don't know.
Okay.
I did and I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. They're so good in cryptography. They encrypted themselves, right? And is it, let's say we do a lot of at work, we do some incident response and stuff. But what is the difference, let's say, in procedure? In military, my guess is things are happening much quicker.
Much slower.
No?
Yeah. So because everything needs to be justified, everything needs to be with proven track record, needs to be approved. You cannot just do wild stuff, Most people, they expect that when you go to this kind of agencies, everything is like the fanciest equipment, the latest technology trends, and this is not the case. Because everything needs to be checked. For example, if tomorrow there is some recent updates for a piece of software, it needs to be tested that it works. It needs to be tested and analyzed carefully for security gaps, and only then it gets deployed to the hardware, for example, to the systems. It doesn't. You cannot use the latest trends because they need to be carefully tested and approved for use in this organization. So contradictory to what everybody believes, everything happens very slowly. You need to request something, then you wait for a week, it gets approved by X amount of people, you need to provide justification, then you need to document what and how you're gonna do. It's very, very carefully, the procedures are very strict.
Okay. Well, let's say one of the other things that's happening, obviously everything has a lifetime. There is no endless technology, right? Apart from Nokia 3310, and my guess is that the military is no longer using it. But how do you handle all of this, let's say logging, equipment and so on? Every time there is a signature, right? I use the laptop. What happens? And then after you explain this, what happens if I forget my laptop, NATO laptop on the airport?
Nobody's going to read the information. So with the information, everything will be good. I'm not sure if you're still going to be employed though.
Ex-NATO. Yeah. How do you become an ex-NATO?
Alexa, what's the fastest way?
Yeah.
Becoming an ex-NATO for dummies. So when it comes to access, of course, access is revoked immediately. If you don't need the access, you have to give back your access equipment, which allows you to authenticate, to authorize and authorize yourself. It gets revoked immediately. Your access is disabled completely from all the systems. And when it comes to equipment, of course, you're not allowed to reuse the equipment. So if you have secret level grade equipment, then it gets destroyed. And then when the next person comes in, he starts from scratch. He starts with fresh equipment, which has never been occupied with data. And how it gets destroyed, there is some disposal procedures. You either drill the hard drives physically so that you can destroy the information, or the more secret way is you're shredding the hard drives completely on pieces, very small, tiny pieces, and that's how you destroy the information. There is also a way to wipe out the data and to override the hard disk space with some dummy data, with some random bits. You don't see this very often. I mean, it's one of the steps. That's how it gets destroyed initially, but then it gets the hardware gets destroyed just in case, just to make sure you cannot read it in no circumstances.
What about the rest of the computer parts? They also get destroyed, or probably
the important ones? Yes, they do. Yeah.
Okay.
But do you know what happens with the missions equipment? Let's say you are deployed on a mission somewhere. In Afghanistan, for example, right?
What?
How do you shred the equipment? How do you wipe out the data when the terrorists are taking over, then you need to leave the country in less than 24 hours. What happens?
I hope it's a flame like Game of Thrones.
First, yes, you're right. You
Yeah?
burn whatever you can burn. Whatever you can, burn. Whatever you cannot burn, you shoot.
Yeah?
You shoot the equipment.
Oh.
That's how you destroy it.
Like,
You're drilling with the pistol, with the rifle.
Yeah. I have an idea. NATO should secretly make one of these like rooms where you just destroy things with a hammer. They're just gonna save them some cash. They get another money from someone else breaking the equipment because they're not gonna know.
With hammer from Temu.
Yeah, hammer from Temu. And then I don't know if you follow them strictly. We follow them as a company, but I don't know how much you've read about it. NATO is now having a lot of investment initiatives, right? Diana, for example, I believe is the name of the fund. And they are very interested in, again, developing a more robust infrastructure in terms of what we do together as member states, right? And we did one very interesting boot camp in November, right? So for those who are interested, NATO is interested in investing in a lot of people. They're looking for innovative tech. As far as I remember correctly, they're mostly interested in something that doesn't exist in terms of we don't know about it. They usually invest in these types of companies that do, let's say, material science. This is very interesting. This is a topic in military. They do things, let's say right now, if you've seen in Ukraine, they have these types of, first of all, nets, these things that prepare you for drone attacks. People who cover their streets and so on with some kind of like reflective equipment or the reflective coverings of the drones, the way that you make it. So similar to the B-52, you can scan it and so on. So there's a lot of interest, regardless whether you're from Bulgaria. Obviously, most people probably will not be, but you have to look at it if you want to develop these types of military and dual use especially. And I heard a lot of interesting things. Satellite is also very interesting, by the way. The way that you use satellite technology with smaller objects. Because let's say drone is hard to detect from this point of view. And I think this is very interesting. It is framed as dual use because most people have a negative connotation for military in Europe, for the reason that we lived the past 50 years in relative peace, apart from whatever Russia is doing. But times are changing. I would definitely advise people to educate themselves, at least in terms of what's possible. And dual-use technology is not necessarily for military exclusively. I've seen some agricultural stuff which can also be used in military when it comes to specifically analyzing soil. For example, can the tank go through there? You can do kind of like analytics from above with either pictures or some drones even, I believe, have the capability of analyzing specific components in terms of how deep it is or how soft it is and so on. It doesn't depend on the drone itself. It's more like the other technology, but there's a very interesting thing happening, and training is one of the other things that was on the table in the boot camp. Because when you have a lot of unprepared people, the way that what we saw in live battlefield in Ukraine, everyone becomes a soldier. So you're fighting everywhere because they're not attacking you on the, how do you call this? They're not attacking you strictly on the front lines. It's not everything is mined up. They attack Kiev, they attack Lviv, and so on. So European countries being very comfortable, I think we might have to take a look into more ways to kind of feel more comfortable. I'm not saying go to fight. That's, again, as I said before, physical fighting on trenches unlikely to repeat after Ukraine and the hundreds of thousands of drones, actually. Ukraine is now top 20. I looked at the world rankings, we're 62 in terms of military power, which I find extremely unbelievable. I think we should be 162. Remember the
62 by 62 position, you mean Bulgaria or?
Yeah. Bulgaria is 62. Yeah. There is a.
You mean we have gunfire soldiers or
gunfire coefficient less probably.
No, I'm joking. We have an army. Yeah.
We do have an army. I think we're capable. One of the. I met a guy, in like a bow. We do bow shooting, right, from time to time. No longer, but back in the day, my sister was doing it. And then there was some people from the Bulgarian military, they do different types of operations. They go to shoot with bows and arrows as well. They're shooters, snipers, so on, right? I've heard some very interesting stories about them. It's not that bad as I think, actually. Bulgarian military is not that bad as I think. It's just not in the public eye. We're so distracted by whatever's happening.
That's how it should be. Why would you be in the public eye? Military should remain secret, should remain private, and only who needs to know, only they need to know about it.
But it's hard to motivate people to understand what military does if it's not shown, at least a little bit. Because people are
I see your point,
we're very decoupled here in Bulgaria. If you ask anyone, like especially a young person, 30 and below probably, about war, they wouldn't know anything. I'm not saying historical World War II videos on YouTube, saying like what will happen in a theoretical war, how does this work? And being prepared is one of the core components of winning or surviving in the case, as we are an external border in one of the 3, 4, 5 communication and transportation hotspots in the world. We are in the Bulgaria, and since the Roman Empire is in the middle of trade between Asia and Europe, and this is a very important spot. Black Sea, the Dardanelles, and Bosphorus, and so on. I think we need to consider more our approach introducing military ideas in a non-aggressive way. And in the Dual Bootcamp, one of the investors said this. They run a big fund, they do dual use exclusively, right? Not necessarily military. And he said it's always the same conversation with regular investors. They say we don't want to invest in things that kill people. Okay, so you don't invest into that, and Russia knocks on the door, and what happens? Or not even Russia. I don't hate Russians or anything like that. It's just a circumstance. But whoever does, if you don't project strength, you will be obviously overtaken. We have in European Union, there's also the financial thing that people often overlook. Yes, we are not the biggest in terms of, but we're still the most. I think based on GDP, European Union is the biggest economic bloc in the world. As combined strength, we are bigger than USA, maybe not individually, and this needs to be protected somehow. In its cybersecurity is a core component that I think we should put more into this through with the allies and with NATO, do the cross collaboration. And the other thing I think is just from my opinion, not on the technical side, we need to find ways to communicate as well with more internally, like with companies, because if something happens, let's say military incident response on a kind of like on a business scale, what happens? Because we see right now critical infrastructure is attacked. This is the new Russian plan to just stop all the electricity in Ukraine. They're essentially copying what Ukraine did to them, but in a smaller scale. I'm not quite sure how ready we are for something like this, and it's unlikely with the cybersecurity power of a single country for you to be able to respond. Maybe there is a case to be made for regular cybersecurity companies participating somehow in incident response plans of the government. Quite sure that we have it.
Well, you have it under the form of this thing which is called CTI, the Cyber Threat Intelligence, which is basically a collective database. So let's say all the big cybersecurity companies out there, they share information about malicious threat actor groups, about what malware is trending nowadays, what countries are initiating the most attacks to what other countries. You have this kind of information. It's constantly getting exchanged between the member states and between the corporations as well, the cybersecurity companies. So there is some collaboration, but I completely agree with you. It can be much better. We can introduce more security, more communication exchange to improve the situation.
Yeah, and also make obviously the executives aware. Let's say we have in a democratic world, every energy system is a separate private entity. What happens in Bulgaria, at least, there's 3 different electricity entities. if they get attacked.
Yeah, but they fall under the National Security Organization, the nation critical infrastructure facilities, which are crucial for the national security. So they are treated differently. They don't work like private companies. They have much better cybersecurity measures in place, much stricter processes. So the aviation, the maritime industry, the power plants, they are considered critical infrastructure facilities. So they are treated differently. It's not like the banks, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And a personal question to you. Does NATO feel like when you work there, does NATO feel like something where nation matters? Let's say, for example, visit Nationality, you see American person there, because this is right now in the media for everyone who is not actively working there. They think, America is against the Europe and so on. Does this show in NATO?
Completely no. I would say people are so united. You're never gonna see, I never saw, not a single time, somebody blaming another nation or somebody criticizing someone because he belongs to this nationality or he has this cultural belonging. All the people are treated equally. Everybody make friends with other cultures, with other nationalities. These people, they work as a group, they work as a family, as a single unit. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have different teams, and then every team is like, they have their own department, their own jokes and conversations. But at the end of the day, this organization, it's present, it exists because of a common shared value, because everybody wants to do something for society, for the population. Everybody has the same mission. So I think that's quite uniting. And when you hear the political statements right now, I'm pretty sure that all these guys working in NATO right now, the US guys, they feel so bad because of this one, because someone might be pointing finger at them, and tomorrow, right now, for example, US guys, they work all together with the Polish guys, with the Bulgarian ones. We work in the same office. So what happens tomorrow? US declares war on the rest of the NATO member states, and what happens? These guys sitting next to each other, they're gonna fight each other? Like, that's crazy, These people, they love each other, they're friends.
Yeah. But I think in one of the good things that happened because of that, it's not only security, but from what I read, obviously, we're not in the Pentagon, I think the American generals refused.
They did. What I heard, they did. They're very much against.
They refused to work with Trump on planning anything against NATO
That's
states.
Crazy.
Yeah, this is ridiculous to be completely honest. All right, well, Krasi, thank you for sharing your experience. For me, at least, it was enlightening. I think
you didn't ask me for the tapes, though.
The tapes? Okay, tell me about the tapes. What's the tapes, man?
I came here, and I was like, "I'll guys bring you back to the 90s." And I said, I told Ajo, hey, can you ask me a question about the tapes? And he was like, yes, I will ask you. And then he forgot to ask me about the tapes.
We got CDs in the 90s, man. You want to go back?
No, man. Do you know how backups are stored? It's not on the cloud.
No?
Because everybody will have access to the information, apparently. It's not on hard drives, which you're storing in your cabinet. It's not on CD drives. Tapes. Yeah. That's how information is mostly stored nowadays, the critical information, because you can easily destroy the tapes. They store a lot of information. They're cheap, very cheap, easy to record, not so easy to get the information out though. And you can burn them in a minute, if you have to wipe out the information.
But these are the tapes that look like a video camera, right? These are
it's like specific tapes for data storage. Yeah, it's like big tapes. Yeah.
Okay, I've seen it.
It's not videotapes from...
If you look at old, the IBM machines from the 60s and 70s, I think there's I forgot the terms, when you do Fortran and things like this, you use these photo cards or something like this, it's not a tape, it's a card, and then you break it and so on. But these are after that. I believe I've seen them on the 70s, 80s IBM machines, the industrial ones, not the personal computers.
Nowadays, that's the best way to store information.
the best way.
Huge amount of information that you can store in a very, very cheap way.
What about the reading? How is it like a specific device that reads it?
It's very complicated. You better never need this information. It's classified. You know where the tape is. You know you can get this information, but it's slow as fuck.
Slow to read. Yeah,
it's very slow, very complex to read. It's not like let me open the file and then unarchive the file. It's like complex. You need to have someone. You need to have a physical person to go and like retrieve the information from the tape.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's complicated, but it's very cheap because you need to store a lot of information. If you're eavesdropping so much traffic, intercepting so much traffic so that you can catch the bad guys, so that you can see the attack patterns, the malware codes. You need a lot of data storage to store all this information. So using tapes back in the 90s, back in the 80s maybe. I remember the 90s. You remember the 80s?
Yeah, no, I'm 88, mate. I'm not that old. So yeah, okay, cool. Maybe we should show some. No, but we don't have the tapes. Is there anyone using tapes apart from military? I've heard.
No, it's widely used. It's still widely used in enterprises nowadays. So it's not a specific military thingy. But guys, if someone has a tape, please leave us a comment. Let us know.
We want to see it.
And if you're willing to give us a tape, we'll show it in the next podcast. Yep. That would be interesting.
We're not going to even read the information because we can't.
We promise we can't.
This is, by the way, immune to LLM attacks.
Hashtag no AI.
If you want to be immune to AI, tapes are your thing. Okay.
All right, guys. Well, stay secure. We hope you never have to get in a war, of course. But if you have to, better be cyber protected.
Better be safe than sorry, I would say.
Let us know what you think about the political situation. We don't want to become political. We're not biased. Just interesting to see what's your opinion on the whole thingy with Trump and the rest of the world. So if you have some or suggestions for the next episode, let us know.
Stay tuned for the next one, guys, and we will see you soon. Have a good one.